Welcome to Femme Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and today we are packing up to spend our summer at Cousins Beach as we deep dive into The Summer I Turned Pretty, Season 3, final season, episodes 1 and 2. But before we fangirl over our favorite summer boys, let me tell you how you can follow the pod. You can follow the pod on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch full video breakdowns on YouTube or on Spotify. You can follow the pod on Instagram at FemmeandFuriousPod, and you can send me an email over at femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. You also can join the Two Femme, Two Furious community. That is over on Patreon. It's $10 a month, and that gets you Femme and Furious fully loaded bonus episodes. It gets you Sunday Brunch, which is a virtual monthly hangout. It gets you a 15% discount on merch and live events. It gives you access to the Suffragette Award, which gives you privileges on episode topics, bonus content, and more. You get Tea Time, which is our online chat, and then you get the Fast Five, which is a weekly content roundup. All right, let's take a chic peek at Season 3, Episodes 1 and 2 of The Summer I Turned Pretty. Here is a blanket spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning for all 3 seasons. We will be talking about all 3 seasons of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And we will also be talking about the books, okay? I haven't reread all of the books. I've read them in the past, like years ago, and I haven't reread them. I've just finished rereading the first book. By the time this episode releases next week, not this episode, but the next episode in the series, by the time we talk about episode 3, I will have finished all 3 books, okay? So maybe not so heavy on book spoilers for this particular episode, but as we move forward, just know that we will be talking about the books if that is important to you. But we will definitely be talking about all 3 seasons, Season 1, Season 2, and this is the 3rd and final season of The Summer I Turned Pretty. Now, Episode 1 and Episode 2 were released together. I don't know why I thought this was going to be a full binge drop. I did not realize this was going to be week by week, so I've changed my content schedule in case you're a little confused in order to cover this week for week, because this feels like a significant moment in the cultural zeitgeist. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But Episode 1 and Episode 2 were released together. They are titled Episode 1, Last Season, and Episode 2, which is Last Christmas. Both were directed by Zoe Kasovitz. I don't know if that's how you actually say her name. Sorry if that's not. And both episodes were written by Jenny Han, who is the original writer of the books. Now, also, in case you're interested in reading the books, I would like to let you know that the audiobooks are read by Lola Tung, who is Belly in the show. So it is a nice familiar voice if you've watched all of the shows. I've read the physical books, but I knew that I wasn't going to have enough time right now to read the physical books over because there's obviously a wait list at the library to get some of these right now. So I am just doing an audiobook listen. That's how I figured that out. Okay, let's dive into this week's Femme Frame, where we will talk about key feminist themes, history, cultural context, and more. This is a little less of a normal femme frame for me and more of a love letter to the ideology of girlhood. So I found The Summer I Turned Pretty through my youngest sister, who at present is 15, but probably when the show released was 12 or so, maybe a little bit older, 13. Now my youngest sister, both of my sisters, but my youngest sister knows that I am a pop culture nerd, and she asked me if I have seen this show called The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I hadn't. But I walked into the living room later that afternoon, and I found that my sisters were deep in debate, sitting on the couch, arguing over Team Jeremiah or Team Conrad. And now my interest was piqued. A love triangle? My sisters? Okay, you can hook me in and get me to watch something simply because this is valuable intel to me as an older sister. My youngest sister was vehemently Team Conrad, which immediately made me curious. Like, who is this Conrad guy and what type of person is my sister into? I sat down to watch the pilot, and Belly is in her car on the way to Cousins like 5 minutes into the first episode. She is singing along to Can't Do Better by Kim Petras. And I was hooked. I hadn't even met Conrad or Jeremiah yet. I hadn't even gotten to the love triangle yet. But I knew right then and there that it wasn't just a story about a love triangle. This was a story about girlhood. The romance was just supplemental to that. Even the title of the show, The Summer I Turned Pretty, hits on something real. We can all remember that summer for ourselves. I vividly recall walking past my mom's car and seeing my reflection in her car mirror as I was walking down the driveway in between the summer of 7th grade and 8th grade and recognizing that I had boobs. Big ones. And I like tugged my PacSun tank top like up a little bit higher, completely unsure of what to do with this information. And that's the magic of this show, right? Belly's arc goes from being a wide-eyed, petulant little girl to being a messy college junior. It mirrors a collective experience. And she gets a lot of flack on the internet, especially from millennials who are older now and wiser now. But the truth is that I think we feel protective over her, or at least I do. And I think that's the point. Look, millennials love a beach show. We always have. We were raised on Laguna Beach and the OC and Jersey Shore and Lost. And all of those have lovely, beautiful love triangles somewhere in their plotline amongst their many, many seasons. If someone's having an identity crisis to the sound of crashing waves, millennials are hooked. Okay? We are so in on that. So it's no surprise that even though this show is said to be made for Gen Z, my entire Instagram feed is flooded with other millennials, particularly millennial women, who are going feral over this teenage love triangle. Why is that? Because The Summer I Turned Pretty is nostalgia catnip. It gives us the chaotic, emotionally reckless energy that we thrived on in our formative years. The debutante ball from season 1, which by the way is not in the books, they pushed the love triangle up because they weren't sure if they were going to get other seasons. That Deb ball, the debutante ball, and then Jeremiah punching Conrad at the Deb ball, that is very welcome to the OC, bitch. Just gonna say it. Okay? And then this season we have I Thought We Were on a Break, and that is just a Ross and Rachel reboot. The references aren't accidental. The show is designed to speak to us. And we love it because we've all been Belly. We've all been 20. We've all been stupid in love and have made horrifyingly bad decisions because of it. When I was 16, very, very similar to this situation, I had a boyfriend who was older than me and he was not really well off, and my parents paid for the two of us to go to prom. And I was not allowed to go to after prom because after prom was like in Wildwood, New Jersey. So again, Jersey Shore-esque vibes. I was not allowed to go to the after prom. However, I did go to prom and my parents paid for us. They paid for our limo, they paid for our tickets, all of that kind of stuff. And he cheated on me in the after prom. And somebody, I don't know who, I will never know who till the day I die, maybe this podcast will give me some additional information. Somebody at the after prom had pictures of it and printed those pictures out and posted them on my locker. Also not a kind thing to do, but I ended up coming out of my theater class, which was directly across the hall from my locker, and see all of these pictures and had a very dramatic moment of like ripping them off and having them behind my back and asking him about them and throwing them in his face in the hallway. All these pictures of him with another girl at after prom. And even then, even knowing this, even having had that experience, I still messed around with him afterwards that summer because I was 16 and that's what 16-year-old girls do. That's what being a teenage girl looks like. It's messy and it's complicated and it's nuanced in this experience that we have as we all go through it. I think telling stories about girls in this phase of life is really important because society still treats these stories as frivolous. They do many things that come to girlhood, but they are not. They are cultural pinpoints. They document a shared human experience, figuring out who you are, navigating changing relationships, redefining your experience of love and romance and sexuality, and separating from your parents just enough to stand on your own. It's messy and it's awkward and it's powerful and it deserves to be cherished. Historically speaking, storytelling has always been a vital form of connection for women. From recipe swaps to sewing circles to birthing stories, we have always had this sense of communion through circles and stories and things like that. And watching Belly, we're in this fascinating position of understanding her because we've all been there, even if we haven't had the same experience, and even now that we are older and adults and we disagree with her. That's invaluable, especially for us as millennials, because now we are a generation who is shaping the generation beneath us. We are no longer the teenage girl. We are probably the Laurels and the Susannas in this story who are reminiscing about getting a high and who are discussing these more adult issues like cancer and seeing the different perspectives of grief as an adult and navigating your career through it and like navigating grief as a teenage girl and a teenage boy and seeing these discrepancies and being able to relate to all of it because we're sort of at that bridge point right now in our generation. That's why I love watching the show with my sisters, because it reminds me that girlhood connects us. Even when our ages and our perspectives and our choices are completely and totally different, there is still so much that we can experience through the grace of what it is to reach acceptance for where these characters are and how we relate to them and where we are and how we are relating it to our lives. So I know it's not a normal femme frame, but it felt so important to me to just mention that telling these stories about girlhood and having the internet and like older generations blow up over this storyline, that if you're looking at it from the outside and you're just like, it's like a teenage love story. Yes. And that is so invaluable because it's a part of the growth that we get to be here, to be adults, and to watch Belly as she completes her arc, and to watch Jeremiah and Stephen and all of these other people who we get to see as they are completing their arcs as well. All right, so we're going to do a sleigh by sleigh. We are going to go beat by beat through episode 1 and episode 2. So episode 1, which was last season, titled Last Season, opens with the song Dreams by the Cranberries. So episode 1 opens with Dreams by the Cranberries, and we see that Belly is getting dropped off at college. Now, I know that there's a lot of Taylor Swift in the music in the playlist, but I think that the show has a great selection of music choices, and I just want to throw that out there because seeing Belly get dropped off to Cranberries and see this like beautiful moment of her with her family, and Taylor is there and Jeremiah is there, and just watching her come into it to this like really positive song. Again, Cranberries is touching on millennial nostalgia, just felt really cutesy to me. I don't know, I really enjoyed it. Taylor, Belly, and Jeremiah are all going to college together at Finch. They are gearing up for their shared college experience, and Jeremiah and Belly are still together after the ending of season 2, where Belly was ending her junior year. So we've skipped ahead literally 4 years. She was in her junior year of high school when we last saw her in season 2. She was going from her junior year into her senior year. And now, same thing, she's at the end of her junior year of college going into her senior year, or she will be at the very least. So it skips ahead 4 years later, but we sort of get that first scene where she's getting dropped off and her parents are there, and we see Jeremiah helping her get set up. And I will just say, I absolutely love Laurel as a mom. There are so many times that she does stuff that feels super realistic to me. There's obviously tons of times when it feels very much like a TV mom too. But this idea of her sitting down with Belly and just being like, explore yourself and like, don't limit yourself in college. I had a similar conversation with my mom when my mom dropped me off at school, and just remembering these moments and again, holding it in tenderness and like the excitement to also share some of that with my sisters as they gear up. My one sister right now is a junior in the summer going into her senior year. So right where Belly was when we last left her in season 2. And that experience for me, as I get to go through the shaping of my sister's experiences. So there's a lot in this show for me, if you could tell, that's like layered together with my sister's. But that feels like an important part of it for me. Yours experience, obviously, probably is different. But I just love Laurel and I love this conversation that they have. Laurel also in this conversation with Belly brings up Agnes, and she says that Connie baby is doing well out in California. We then get to see this like sort of phase ahead into this post-coital scene with Jeremiah. And there's all these photos on the wall that Belly has put up in her dorm room. And one includes a little Easter egg of her and Jeremiah dressed up as Kavinsky and Laura Jean from All the Boys I've Loved Before, which is another one. We'll get another Easter egg to that in episode 2 on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, there are, I believe, 3 movies. At the very least, there's 2. I'm pretty sure there's 3. There's definitely 3 books. Anyway, the movies are on Netflix, and then there was a spin-off series called XO Kitty, which is Laura Jean's sister. That is also over on Netflix, and then this is obviously on Amazon Prime. But we get that little Easter egg of them dressed up as Laura Jean and Kavinsky on Halloween. So there's this cluster of pictures of Jeremiah and all her friends, and then separate from that, kind of like over where her head would be on her bed, there is a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And this is obviously hinting at her getting into the Paris Study Abroad program, but I would just want to say our girl is a master manifester. She had that up there and she knew she wanted to go. Laurel ends up calling Belly and Jeremiah while they're postcoital, and she ends up bringing up the speech for Susanna's dedication and memorial out in Cousins. And one of my favorite things that then happens in this scene is they kind of get up and Belly's like, all right, I gotta go to class. Jeremiah's like, I thought you said like you needed me to take care of business. And she was like, you did, buddy. And he's like, I'll show you, buddy. I thought that scene was really cute. It felt very relational to me. It was like one of the only times that I actually felt like they were a real couple that made sense in this storyline at all. You will come to learn that, like my sister, I am hashtag Team Conrad. And speaking of Conrad, this is when he ends up making his debut to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Also, a very notable theme for this show is that Loving Him was red. So we get a lot of Taylor Swift, right? And for this season, there was a lot of Loving Him was red theming in the teaser trailers and things like that. And every time that we see Belly in relation to Conrad, there is red. She's wearing red. She's got red somewhere notable on her, and we'll be tracking this throughout the season. But here's what I will say is this is Conrad coming into the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I thought that was a really nice little like wink and nod perhaps to this. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but if it was, I just thought that was really cutesy. It's also a great song. Who doesn't love the Red Hot Chili Peppers? I love that we get to see Conrad in a growth trajectory. Conrad in season 1 and season 2 is what we would say emotionally repressed, and how he navigates that in his response to the ideology of duty and responsibility. In season 1, he's quit football. He's drinking, he's smoking, he's doing all of these things that are alternative to who he used to be or who he was. And that's a part of him being a teenager and growing up and things like that, right? But here in his college journey, we get to see that he's got friends. He's playing football again. That's what the guy is saying as Conrad's walking into the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's kind of like, we need our quarterback. And Conrad's like, yeah, text me. So we know that he's playing football again. Okay, obviously he's probably not playing D1 football, but he's back to himself, it seems, or has de-thought a little bit from some of this trauma. Obviously, it's a lot of trauma when your mom dies. Spoiler alert if you didn't see seasons 1 and 2. Their mom is dead. We also see that he's thumbs up going to therapy. Now, in this therapy session, they are discussing how the perfect day of going to Cousins would look. And in this, he mentions everybody. He's like, Jeremiah's there, my dad's there, Laurel's there, Steven's there. And then we get a flash of Belly, but he can't even say her name. Like, he cannot even bring himself to say her name. That's how in love with her he is. And I can't stand it okay? Because I love a man who yearns. You will come to know this about me the longer we spend together on this podcast. I love a man who yearns. I love a man who yearns. Jeremiah is a man who lusts. Conrad is a man who yearns. And we will also be talking about this as the season goes on. Don't at me, Jelly Belly fans, okay? I'm sorry to all the hashtag Jellyfisher people out there. It's not me. I will always be Team Conrad, and I always have been, by the way. It goes back then to Jeremiah and Belly, and they're having an interesting conversation where the girls from the volleyball team pass her by, and Jeremiah asks Belly if she misses it, and she says no. And then she says that sometimes she wonders what would have happened if she didn't go for the ball and tweak her knee. And then she says it's weird how one choice can end up shaping your whole future. And obviously, this is a full nod, a full big nod to her choice between Conrad and Jeremiah and how that one choice shaped her whole future. But in the end, Jeremiah ends up saying, well, then you wouldn't have found sports psychology. And Belly says, that's not true. I think I would have always found it. It just would have taken me longer to get there. So to me, this feels kind of like a time loop, or like there is a nod to the fact that she's going to end up with Conrad because she would have ended up there anyway. It just took her longer to get there. You know, if she would have made the choice of just being with Conrad at the end of season 2 instead of being with Jeremiah. So she's taken the long route with Jeremiah, but she is going to end up with Conrad in the end. At least that's what I think. Fingers crossed. We will see. I know what happens in the book, but Jenny Han has already said that what has happened in the book is probably not the way it's going to go. And honestly, season 1 and 2 have not followed the books in a traditional context at all. So I'm not sure what changes that means will happen in the show, but I do know that she has said that what we may be anticipating won't be what necessarily happens. So it'll be interesting. I am in for this ride alongside you guys. We then cut to Steven and his stone cold coworker, Denise, who is maybe my favorite character in the whole show at this point. And we see that his boss is noticing him, and I am confused a little bit why Steven, who went to Princeton and graduated with honors for engineering, is working in finance. Question mark, question mark. I don't understand, but that's just me. Okay, so we see the two of them. Obviously, I feel like they're gonna have a little dalliance at some point, even though I love Steven and Taylor together. But to me, it kind of seems like they're teeing up Steven to be with Denise, or at least for Denise to be the counterweight to perhaps Taylor at some point. I'm not sure because there's only 11 episodes and we're 2 episodes in. So we shall see. Steven and Taylor are in a situationship, and we learn that Taylor and Steven are both cheating on their significant others. Taylor is dating a guy named Davis who's in the frats, and Steven is dating a girl named Mia. So they are in this situationship, they are hooking up together, but they both have significant others. Cheating is obviously a theme that they are looking to explore during this season. Now, man-child, Jer, is a fucking idiot who's not graduating, and Belly is like, come here. And he lays on her lap. And everything about their relationship is giving mommy issues. I know this makes sense because I know that Jeremiah's mom has in fact died. And I know that he also has daddy issues too. Okay, so let's not discredit the daddy issues there. But everything about their relationship seems parentalized. Like Belly and Jeremiah seem like a mother and a child. That's at least how I perceive their relationship, and I'll talk about that as we kind of go through, and there's different examples. But when he lays his head on her lap like this, there is something about it that it didn't feel romantic to me. It didn't feel sweet. It just felt like he needed to be nurtured and coddled. And I don't know. It just seems like she is the nurturer and the coddler and the enabler, perhaps, in some of his bad behavior, because she doesn't allow him to grow up. She just allows him to perpetually be treated like a little boy because she is the one that's doing the mommying. We then see Conrad in a Casablanca building, which I got to see in theaters a few years ago for the 80th anniversary, perhaps. And it's one of my favorite movies. If you've never seen it, it's a romance from World War II where Rick Blaine, who is played by Humphrey Bogart, owns a popular nightclub in Casablanca during World War II. Anyway, Rick Blaine finds himself in a love triangle with his ex, Ilsa, and her husband, Laszlo. Now, this movie and the idea of Casablanca is important and clearly going to be a through line for not just this season, but also particularly for next episode. We then get to finally meet Agnes. Now, we've heard about her earlier in the episode, but now we finally get to meet her. We discover that Agnes and Conrad both got into this incredible internship with Dr. Namazi. And then it cuts back to Taylor, who has to go to finals freakout. She kind of like kicks Steven out, and Steven gets a text. He says it's from Mia, but there's something about the relationship with Mia because we get to see Davis later. And then in episode 2, we will talk about how Steven says that he breaks up with Mia. I kind of just feel like because there's no face to name that Mia is not real. And then if she's not real and Steven's making her up, then like, who was this text from? And what did it mean? Because there was a focus on it. As they're going to finals freakout, as Taylor is getting there, it cuts to Belly and Jeremiah, and we see that in the least sexy way ever, because there is a sexy way to do sunscreen in a TV show or a movie or a book, that she's like, come here, and she's putting it on his nose, like the tiniest little bit, and she's like almost nagging him about it. And he is kind of like, Mom, like, he obviously doesn't do that. But that's how it feels watching this scene of her putting sunscreen on him. This is the first time that she's wearing red. She's wearing a red t-shirt, and then she changes into the tri-fi, if that's what they're called, shirt when she is faux inducted into Taylor's sorority. And then later, she's in red sunglasses watching Jeremiah as Conrad calls, and she answers, and he knows right away it's her, and right away he like has to get off the phone, like he can't even stand to stomach it. We get then this scene of Jeremiah with his winking at Belly to Justin Timberlake. Now, the song that they are singing in the car is Summer Love, and in season 1, during her birthday, Jeremiah sings Summer Lovin' from Grease to Belly. So there is something about this idea of summer love, right? Which a summer love is a love that does not last. A summer love is something that is fleeting for a season. So it's important to also note that there is a theme here of summer love with Jeremiah, that it's something that's short-lived and fleeting, but impactful, right? Summer love can be so impactful. But you know what's going to ruin the tour? That is when your girlfriend stops the moment, turns the music down, and asks you, like she is your mother, if you've called your brother back because hashtag mommy issues. And then immediately following up that moment with your dad calling you and reaming you out because you are a literal man-child, and then bailing on your girlfriend because of your daddy issues, because you just need to be with your thoughts. So he like bails on this dinner with Steven and Belly to go think about things, but has no problem being at a frat party later. Conrad, meanwhile, can't even say Belly's name, is having a whole conversation with Agnes and kind of like confesses his love for Belly to her, and basically says, I'm very rarely alone with her and like don't see them much over the years, and my relationship with Jeremiah is great and I know that they're happy, but like I can't be alone with her because if I'm even alone with her for a second, which is why he like rushes her off the phone earlier, he's like, I won't be able to keep it in. And Agnes is like, keep what in? He's like, how much I love her. And this is why he leaves after the weather is fine enough next episode in Christmas. And this is why he has to rush her off the phones, and why he's so nervous, by the way, to go to Cousins and do the memorial, because he's nervous to see her and be alone with her when this has been weighing on him for so long, and he's had time to digest it and think about it from every angle over the course of the years, and never really getting a moment again because her and Jeremiah have continued to be together. And then we see that after this dinner, Belly brings Jeremiah food because she's his actual mom. He has no problem again being at a frat party, had no problem being at a frat drinking spree earlier that day. Couldn't go to dinner, a family dinner, but did get food from his mom, Belly. Nothing takes the romance out more than parentalizing your partner. I've been there. You've been there probably. And I'm just sorry for Billy because this is a man-child, not a man. Meanwhile, not that I want to, this has nothing to do with the actor, by the way. Gavin is great. I'm just not Team Jeremiah. But Jeremiah changing Nellie to Belly gave me the biggest ick. I was like, ew. And I don't think I'm the only one. I've seen that a couple times on the internet. Meanwhile, Conrad is talking about his feeling with Agnes, and he says that he's been in love once. And Agnes is like, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10. And he is like, it was a 10. Like, he's been in love once. He's been in love with Belly. So he is opening up. He's going to therapy. He's doing all the things. Okay? Points off for Conrad, though, even though I am Team Connie baby. Points off for him because he lets Agnes pay for the bill. He goes to pay for his beer and she's like, I got it. And he is like, okay, fine. Even though he's loaded, literally rich. So he lets Agnes pay for the bill and then he leaves her alone, a woman, in a bar that they clearly went to together after they've been drinking at night. Points off, Connie baby. We don't do that. We don't leave girls alone at bars when they've been drinking, and we don't let them foot the bill. At the very least, we're going to split the bill with them if she's going to be independent. Cool. Then we get the bomb of the episode. Jeremiah hooked up with Lacey and Cabo. The entire scene is for millennials. It's a repeat of Friends. The slap is golden. The fuck you is amazing. This happened in the book as well. But to be fair, I haven't read the books in a minute, so I don't exactly remember. Like I said, I am rereading them. I will have finished all 3 books by the time we record episode 3 next week. So I can't say definitively, but here's what I will say that I recall. I'm pretty sure in the books she does not have sex with either of the brothers. I think she is with both of them, but she's not like with them. And so this scene of him cheating ends up being much heavier because she hasn't had sex with Jeremiah at this point, even though they've been in a relationship for a really long time. At least it's what I remember, though again, I'm not 100% sure, and I will be more definitively sure next week and can confirm or deny whether or not my memory is real. But he does cheat in the books. He does also cheat. He goes to Cabo and he cheats on her. Then we get episode 2, which opens to the song Lacey, which is who obviously Jeremiah is cheated with, by Olivia Rodrigo. So that's the song that it opens with, and we get the fight leading up to Cabo. Now, Belly brings up that Jeremiah saw his dad last weekend and that he's been in a crappy mood ever since. And Jeremiah's like, well, yeah, like there's nothing like seeing your dead mom's grave that puts you in a really foul mood. So we know that he was in Cousins because that is where Susanna is buried. And the thought going around on the internet is that he went to Cousins. He found the crossword with the sticky note from Conrad to Belly, and that this is why he sort of ends up being in a bad mood, ends up picking this fight, and then ends up booking the trip to Cabo and then breaking up with Belly and sort of going off the rails a little bit. I also love that in this fight, Belly mentions Jeremiah's inferiority complex because this is true. This has been true since the very beginning of the TV show. And I don't think the writing for the show has been as profound as it could be or as rich in character exploration as maybe I would like it to be. Do I still like the show? Yeah. But like you're filling in a lot of gaps to make sense of the storyline, or you're filling in a lot of the gaps to make sense of the character choices. But one thing is for sure, Jeremiah has been in competition at no one's expense but his own with Conrad since the very beginning. They're described in the books as like not that close of brothers. So it's also really interesting to me that they're seemingly closer in the show, but Jeremiah does have an inferiority complex compared to his brother Conrad. He has an issue around how he perceives himself versus how he thinks everyone else perceives Conrad. So I love that Belly brings it up because that feels important and it feels true to the story from the very beginning. They go through the whole spring break, right? Jeremiah then completely lies by omission by not telling her. He seems like he's gearing up to build up the confidence to tell her and then doesn't. Okay. Right when she goes to see him, he should tell her. And then He gives her this consolation gift that he probably got from a Cabo airport. Okay, and let's be mindful that Jeremiah is loaded. Like, these boys are rich. These boys have money. These boys have trust funds, and they are loaded. And he gets her a tacky airport gift after he fucked another girl X amount of days after him and his girlfriend broke up, and then lied to her about it, and then gives her this bracelet. And she's just like gobbles it up. And she's like, no, I love it. I love it so much. And I would be like, bitch, you're rich. Not that I'm with you for your money, but like this $3 puka shell bracelet that you got from the Cabo airport. No, thank you. When she shows up to this conversation that she is having with Jeremiah after Cabo, she is in blue. And I know a lot of people have been saying that the blue is in reference to Blue Like I've Never Known from the song Red by Taylor Swift, right? Being that Conrad is red and that Jeremiah is blue like I've never known. I don't know. I feel like that doesn't necessarily make sense because Blue Like I've Never Known, Gray, All Alone, Loving Him Was Red are all about the same person. So clearly they're differentiating that Loving Him Was Red and everything like that is correlated to Conrad. But I think the blue perhaps is actually alluding to maybe something borrowed, something blue. So I think it's more correlated to the wedding. I don't know. Maybe Jenny Han will weigh in on this at some point in the future. When she then is in her dorm room, she's crying, she's spinning out. She takes the puka shell bracelet and she goes, fucking worthless. And she throws it across the room. And this is true, fucking worthless, is true both for the gift and for Jeremiah. Jeremiah then is blowing up her phone with the lamest text. He's like, I'm sorry. Not even like, I'm so sorry. And then he's like, I hate myself. And I'm like, great, I hate you too. This is a horrible text to send somebody when you've cheated on them. Okay, Taylor, on the other hand, is the best friend that everybody deserves. I love Taylor. I am a Taylor stan. I'm not saying she's perfect, but she is probably my favorite character on the show. We then see Belly in red. She is wearing the red jacket as she leaves, and she is going to get her passport picture done with Annika. She's going to class, so she's in this red jacket. It's also interesting that Jeremiah has a friend named Redbird, and Loving Him Was Red. So Jeremiah and Redbird are in their frat. They're frat bros. They are having a bro-to-bro conversation where we get a very, very quick mention that Redbird had broken up with Sean and that he was devastated over it. And Jeremiah's like, can't compare you with him for 2 minutes. I've known Belly my whole life. Now, obviously, this is either hinting that he is fully gay or that he's bisexual. We know that Jeremiah is bisexual from season 1. So a lot of people on the internet think that this means that they will end up together. But I think also the fact that his name is Redbird and that Loving Him Was Red, this idea of being drawn to red with people that are the end game is perhaps wink, nod, perhaps. We shall see. Belly has amazing friends. Okay? Annika is amazing. Annika's like, I can't get over the fact that he didn't tell you about it. Like, fine. Maybe he really did think that you were broken up. I can see how, like, one could conclude that. But the fact that he didn't tell you about it tells me that he knows he did something wrong. Taylor absolutely, like, goes there with breakfast. Goes to make sure that Belly's okay. Absolutely reams and lays into Jeremiah outside of the dorms. Like, Taylor and Annika and the people that Belly has surrounded herself with are just really good friends. And then we have this conversation that's like bro to bro between Redbird and Jeremiah where he's like, I don't know, man, like, stop saying you're sorry and just like do something about it. I'm just like, what? Tell him that he was wrong. Tell him that this was wrong. And don't justify his actions, which he tries to do. So this is why there's a male loneliness epidemic. And it's because male friendships are just not as rooted in vulnerability as female friendships, I think. And I think that's really well depicted between these two scenes of the two different friend groups talking about what has happened. Again, then Belly is coming out. She is in red when she then sees Conrad for the first time. At Christmas, we get sort of this beginning flashback before it cuts to Jeremiah, who ends up running into Belly and ends up getting on his knees and begging for her. And even though I just said that I love a man who yearns, this was so desperate and disgusting and icky to me. And I know I'm not the only one. I've seen this going around on the internet. as well, but it just gave me the biggest ick. I was like, ew, bro, like, what are you doing right now? And much like Billy does, I would have done the same thing. I would have just walked away from that. And he doesn't even try to get up. It just like flashes to him like sinking even lower on his knees. And I'm just like, good. You should be depleted and defeated. And you should act like you have no dignity, which he does in this scene. But I'm like, nothing about the performance of this, of you being on your knees, feel appropriate to the situation. I don't know. Anyway, it just gave me the ick. I understand why they did it. It's like a physical demonstration of his remorse and his regret, but it did not work for me. Laurel and John are my favorite couple. I love that they're drinking together in the fitness room, avoiding this conference, discussing their lives, discussing, the fact that they're good co-parents, discussing the first time that they had sex, like all of the stuff. It's very cute. It's very, again, reminiscent of our teenage years and that first love and all that good stuff. Steven then shows up to Taylor's dorm and he tells her that he broke up with Mia. They get into a fight and then Steven gets into the accident, which is like the meat and potatoes of this, or at least the meat. Let's just say, I'll say the potatoes or something else, the end of this episode. But the meat of this episode is that he gets into this accident. And I think that in the aftermath, that Taylor and Belly work really well as a team. They work really well as a friend duo, and I just like them. I just like the way that Belly isn't mad at Taylor over it, and they are just there to support each other. Belly knows that Taylor is upset and that she loves Steven, and Taylor obviously knows that Belly is upset and that this is her brother, and they're like working to console each other, but also dividing and conquering what needs to get done. So Belly's filling out the paperwork and Taylor's like, I'm going to call Conrad. I'm going to call Jeremiah. I'm going to call your parents. And just dividing and conquering to both be there and support each other, but to support Steven as well. I loved it. Dr. Namazi lets go of Conrad because he's made a mistake after being upset. So he's cut from the internship. Taylor then confesses her love to a sedated Steven. We get the full flashback of Christmas where Conrad picks up Belly after she falls on the floor. Jenny Han loves a scene of the girl falling to the floor and the love interest being over them and picking them up. Okay, he picks her up in her red pajamas, by the way, and carries her through the threshold. It just felt very marriage-esque. Okay, they then, somewhere later during their Christmas extravaganza, are watching Casablanca, and Conrad sympathizes with Laszlo, the person in the love triangle who has to make the most sacrifices. Now, a line from this movie, not maybe the most famous line, but one of the most famous lines is, "We'll always have Paris." So something similar that we will see perhaps is this idea of "we'll always be infinite," which is what Conrad says to her, I think, at the end of season 1. But also, what is going to happen when Belly goes to Paris? And we'll always have Paris, and what will happen when she's having this experience for herself? I think that is a wink and a nod to the future. We see the scene circulating around the internet with this Easter egg then at the end of the Christmas experience where it's an Easter egg to Jenny Han's book, P.S. I Still Love You, which is in All the Boys I've Loved Before series. That is one of the titles of the book. I think it's the second book. And as she's filling it in, it cuts out and we see that the book kind of has this infinity symbol with the reflection of the book underneath the surface. So we're getting that infinity, in that moment of P.S. I still love you. And we can see that Conrad has erased it and leaves it for Belly to fill in. Agnes then delivers some hard truths to Conrad, and I didn't like her in this moment when Conrad was like, can you take off your shoes? And she's like, I'm only going to be here for a minute. But I liked everything else that she had to say. Steven is okay. And when Taylor goes to confess her love, he tells her he doesn't want to be with her, that this is causing way too much pain for both of them, and that they're finally on the same page, and Taylor just kind of absorbs the blow and leaves. Belly being confused then about how Jeremiah, the scene then cuts to Belly and Belly being confused about how Jeremiah could be just okay to have sex with somebody, even though this is something that is confusing to me. I'm confused how she's confused because from season 1, they have set Jeremiah up to be a character who is lustful. He is hooking up with somebody at the party, is telling Steven that he loves to kiss people. And we see that he's flirting with Gigi. Gigi's like, come save me, Jeremiah. And he's kind of like, all right, she wants to do that. He's constantly flirting. Even Belly says it in season 1 when Kim Cameron is like, you have a thing for Jeremiah. And she's like, no, Jeremiah just flirts with everybody. So there is this experience of Jeremiah being somebody who's flirty, who's lustful, who, doesn't really take things too seriously. And they kind of change this in season 2, but only because he's put in a position that Conrad has consistently been in, which is to be the one that is more mature and paying attention. Conrad knows way before they get to Cousins Beach at the beginning of season 1 that his mom is sick again. And it takes Jeremiah the entirety of the summer to the end of the summer to figure out what Conrad has known all along, and then feeling resentful in season 2 that he has to take over essentially everything that Conrad has been doing from the very beginning, balancing and being responsible and putting their mother to bed and all of the stuff that we see Conrad kind of doing in silence in season 1. Jeremiah does it in a way that he resents Conrad for because Conrad's not there. Layered then on top of that is that he gets Belly in season 2, and then for that summer to change things and for him to sort of manipulate his way into a relationship with Belly. He sees that Conrad and Belly are going to kiss. He knows that Belly has had a crush on Conrad for a long time. He shoots the firecracker at them. He interrupts the moment, but then later on monopolizes on the fact that he interrupted this kiss to get Belly alone, to get her in the pool, and to say, like, I have feelings for you, knowing that this thing was sitting between the two of them. And then over punctuating his anger and frustration. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been angry, but his own anger and frustration and disappointment that Belly ends up picking the person that she has always been in love with at the end of season 1, being disappointed and not talking to her and keeping at her at arm's length. And again, you can understand and respect perhaps everyone's motives, but just to be mindful that he interrupted this moment. He manipulated his way into a relationship with Belly and then fumbled it at the 11th hour, has had her all of this time, has weaseled his way into her heart, and ends up completely fumbling it. And so when she's like, I don't understand how you could be okay with this. How could you not understand how he could be okay with this? He's lustful. He always has been. This is who Jeremiah is. He's careless with things. And the only time that he was careful is when he was literally forced to, because his parents were getting divorced and Conrad was not there, step up and be a man for his mother. This is the only time that he's had to do it. And ever since then, he's diverted exactly back to who he's always been, which is somebody who is a jokester and doesn't take things too seriously and is lustful. That is who he's been. That is who he is. He is a frat boy. He smokes too much weed, according to Belly. This is who he is at his core. And season 2 was a diversion of that because there was no one else there, no one more responsible there between his father and Conrad to pick up the slack and allow him to continue to be who he is. Now, in the book, the proposal is also rushed, and it is also a trauma response to this idea of cheating. Again, maybe you've never been cheated on, maybe you've never been in a situation where you've cheated or you've experienced anything like this in your life, but I will say that just like the puka shells, this is a puka shell 2.0. There is usually some sort of let me do some sort of grand gesture to prove to you that I love you, that I care about you, that I am in it with you. And this made sense to me in the book, even though I hate it. And it makes sense to me even here in the show, even though I hate it, right? Even though we don't like it and we don't agree with it, it makes sense because this is what people who cheat do. They go over the top to prove to you that they're a good person and that they're worth being with, especially when they do value the relationship to a certain degree. And we know that Jeremiah does love and care about Belly. We're just seeing a very different experience of how this is unfolding. So he also does propose in the book, But in the book, he does have a ring. I think what annoys me here is that he was so annoyed in the TV show that Conrad forgot the corsage at prom, at the junior prom, and had this whole dialogue of how he treated it like a chore, that if Jeremiah was the one that was going to bring her to prom, he would have done it right. And instead, we just get him at the end of this episode proposing to her without having talked to Laurel, without having talked to John, without having talked to Steven, has no ring, and is completely doing it to make a grand gesture to Belly that cheating was a mistake and that I'm in it with you. And that would be fine if it was handled differently and if they had worked to rebuild their relationship. So this is just like a trauma response to this thing that has happened, right? Not only has she been cheated on and she's working through the trauma of that with Jeremiah, but then her brother gets into this bad accident and it brings up stuff for you, right? When you go through an experience where you think that you might lose somebody, it brings a lot of stuff up. And even in that moment when they're in the hospital, she's like, an hour ago I was sick to my stomach thinking about Jeremiah. Now I just want him here because he would know what to say to make me feel better. And what it is to be in nuanced and complex relationships and not having definitive, clear, like, this outweighs that. You know, they've known each other since they were born. They've never not known each other. And having to navigate that this person will always be in her life because of Laurel and because of Steven and because of the relationship that they all had with Susanna. But then to say, like, this person also loves Steven and deserves to know that something is going on with Steven because he's also been in his life for forever. And on top of that, I'm now traumatized over this thing that's happening with my brother and I need comfort in this moment. And so, like, that comfort that you can provide for me outweighs the trauma of being cheated on. Like, this trauma is more pivotal than that trauma at the moment. And so, like, you're not in your right mind. That's just how it is. I don't know. So we will see. I am interested to see what will happen next episode. All right, let's crack open our burn book where we look at the superlatives for this episode. It's 2 episodes of TV. Doesn't matter. We're squishing them into 1 podcast episode. The Bold and Bothered Award has to go to the slap that shook the internet. Congratulations, Belly. No one knows how to do a slap like you, followed up with a very stern, very breathy, fuck you. Came from her belly. Literally, Belly's fuck you came from her belly. The Shiro Award goes to Taylor, who not only brings Belly's favorite breakfast, but then absolutely lays into Jeremiah and calls him out for the cheap puka shell bracelet. I am Taylor, she is me. The Femme Fatale Award, Laurel sleeping with John, her ex-husband. Laurel is sexy. You cannot convince me otherwise. Speak Your Truth trophy. I think it is the entire conversation about how it's weird how one choice can shape your entire future. Love that. Honorary Heartthrob is the candy cane falling out of Conrad's mouth. I don't know why. This was a detail from the book and it was great and I love it. Now, adding to our awards for this series in particular is biggest belly flop. The biggest belly flop is going to be Jeremiah cheating on Belly in Cabo twice. Twice is the keyword here. Then we are also adding, just for the series, The Sounds of Summer, which is JT's Summer Love. This is going to go to the best song drop of the episode. And I will just say, JT Summer Love has been in my head. I have been singing the song nonstop since I've watched this episode of television. So that is our Sounds of Summer. That is our episode this week. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Femme and Furious. If you like this episode, share it out on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you may be sharing your content with your favorite people. Okay, email it to somebody or text it to somebody who you love and care about, who is also obsessing over this teen drama and this teen show. Follow me on social media over on Instagram at Femme and Furious Pod. And I will be back on Friday. We are doing a quickie season recap of Ironheart, which is on Disney Plus. It's a Marvel property. And then I'll be back next Tuesday with episode 3 of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And until then, we will always have Paris.